Top 10 meta Pokemon card decks in the Pokemon TCG for the month of September. And before we get into it, I got some good news and some bad news for you guys. Bad news is dollar drink days are over now at McDonald's, so you can no longer enjoy those $1 iced coffees. The good news though is that the Pokemon McDonald's Happy Meals are going to be back starting on September 12th, and they'll be running for a few weeks. So I'm going to eat a ton of chicken nuggets, and if you missed it, I did do an anti-meta top 10 deck video for my Rogue Warriors out there, so if you want to binge watch that video right after, feel free to check it out. This video is going to be a bit more low budget. I won't be showing you guys all the cards and animations of stuff of cards popping up as I talk about them. However, I will be sharing with you guys a deck list for every single list as per usual. So if you guys want to use any of these deck lists, feel free to screenshot them and use them on Pokemon Trading Card Game Live and let me know how they go. 4 honorable mentions to get into as well. So let's get to, I guess you could say, rank number 14. Rank number 14 is going to be an Arceus Umbreon Flying Pikachu deck. This deck is perfect if you want to counter a bunch of the meta Pokemon card decks on this list. Your main attacker, of course, is Arceus and Arceus V-Star, and then you have some alternate attackers like Umbreon VMAX in there for the Mew and Guardy matchup, along with Flying Pikachu VMAX in there for the Lugia, Shen Pao, and other basic attacker matchups too. Coming in at number 13 is a deck a lot of people are cheering for. It's gaining a lot of momentum over the last couple of weeks, and that is Colorless Lugia. This variation of Lugia V-Star uses colorless Pokemon as the main attackers like Slaking V, Weirder V, and the Snorlax that some Lost Box decks tend to play. And I definitely see this deck picking up more popularity as the weeks go by, going into the Pokemon 151 set. Coming in at number 12 is Arcdum, the Arceus Duraludon Umbreon variation of Arceus V-Star. This deck performed very well at the North American International Championships for 2022, piloted by Ian Robb, and it is a very straightforward deck list, which is also kind of like a counter meta sort of pick, with Duraludon being able to block out special energy attackers from your opponent, and you have Umbreon VMAX in there as well to counter those psychic type decks. You also have Spiritomb to counter decks, as well as Path to the Peak and Lost City to be annoying for your opponents as well. Very straightforward to play. On to number 11, one of my favorite decks right now. We have Palkia Shen Pao. Common question I get asked a lot is what starter deck should you buy if you want to hop into the game right now, and I would definitely recommend the Mew VMAX deck, since again it just won Worlds not too long ago. But also Palkia Shen Pao have their own starter decks, and you basically just got to combine those starter decks together and you have a fantastic deck. If you're a fan of water type Pokemon, Palkia Shen Pao, here you go. Top 10 meta decks. Now, just so you guys know, I don't want to offend any, actually I don't really care if I offend you. It is what it is. If you're offended, you're a snowflake. In these lists, I give you guys the top 10 based off of stats, based off of data. This is not my own personal preferences, because if it was, I'd throw Miraidon on at the top, of course, all the time, because it's my favorite deck and I love it. But these decks that I give you guys, in the order that they're in, are from the website justinbasil.com, and they're a great website that aggregates a lot of the data as well. And so the placements of these decks on this list are all based off of online and cup tournament results. So not only is it based off of popularity, but it's based off of popularity of decks that are winning and performing well at higher levels, like top 8 plus in terms of placement. But again, if you disagree with the data, that's totally on you. People are allowed to have wrong opinions, and I don't mind the free engagement if you dislike the list that I show you guys. All right, let's get to number 10. Number 10 being what looks like to be the more optimal way of playing Shen Pao, and that is Shen Pao Baxcalibur. Shen Pao Baxcalibur with a little touch of Arceus V-Star in there for some consistency, just in case, has been seeing a rise in popularity over the last couple of weeks. In fact, I was actually at a challenge at Manta Trading, one of my locals recently, and I played against 4 Shen Pao decks in a row. Like, Shen Pao's popularity is just going nuts right now. This deck uses the power of Baxcalibur being able to fill your board with as much water energies as your hand allows you to, compared to Palkia V-Star, which will take your energies from your discard pile and put them onto your Pokemon. Both are great ways to play, but playing against this deck is very scary because some people worry about this deck being inconsistent, but for whatever reason, maybe it's the power of the 4 copies of Irida inside of it, but this deck is looking really consistent whenever I play against it. It's scary. It's a scary deck. So this is also I believe a slightly cheaper way to play Shen Pao, because you're not running the Palkia line and you just got a 1/1 Arceus there. So the most expensive cards in this list are going to be those Shen Paos. Number 9 dropped a lot from compared to August list, and it is the World Championship winning deck Mew VMAX. Now, this placement of 9, don't discredit it, okay? A lot less people are just playing Mew VMAX because it's proven itself, it works, People know it works, so a lot less people are playing Mew VMAX because it's proven itself. They don't need to do extra testing to try and figure out the perfect 60. A lot of people are playing the Fusion Strike variant. I feel like Mew VMAX is going to get at least 2 spots in the top 8. A lot of this is going to have to do with if people will respect Mew or not. Will people put in their Drapions in their deck? Will people put Spiritombs in their deck? Will people have answers to Mew? Or will they just think that, you know, let's let the other players deal with the Mew VMAXs? I myself, I'm playing a list without Drapion, but that's because they have 2 Raichus instead. So again, just because Mew VMAX is number 9 on this list doesn't mean it's a bad deck by any means. That's just the ranking it's currently at based off of popularity and people playing it. Now that I think about it, I don't think Mew VMAX was placing very high on a lot of top 10 meta lists as well going into the World Championships. Do not sleep on Mew VMAX, because I also expect a lot of people to just pick up the world winning list and play it because it's proven itself. On to number 8. Number 8 is a deck that a lot of people have been hyping up and people have been trying to figure out week after week how is the best way to play Charizard EX. Yeah, Charizard EX is looking like a pretty fierce competitor now in the Pokemon TCG. Here's what looks like to be a really optimal way to play it. Now, one version of Charizard EX I've been seeing grow in a lot of popularity the last couple of weeks is a Lost Zone version of Charizard EX. So if you're very comfortable with the Lost Zone engine, you might want to go with the Lost Zone version, but this version is looking really good in my opinion as well. I would personally play this version instead. The only thing that's really crippling Charizard EX right now is, well, a lot of people will say it's its consistency of getting it out, but I would also have to say that the price barrier is kind of hindering for some people, because one Charizard EX is about $25 to $30 or so, and so you need 3 of those at a minimum, and then you're also gonna have to get well, Pidgeot EX in there too. The list is a little more expensive for the power level that it's being placed at this list. Like Mew VMAX is way better bang for your buck, and it's proven itself. But because Obsidian Flames is the latest set to come out, with Charizard EX being the poster child of that set, these are just the prices you have to pay for playing that new shiny deck. I'm excited to see if Charizard EX can do well for Pittsburgh as well. I'm hoping at least one gets to squeeze in the top 8. On to number 7, what I believe is personally the better way to play Lugia V-Star as well, and that is Single Strike Lugia V-Star. Lugia V-Star is just, it can't go away. Lugia always finds its way into these top 10 meta deck list videos, and right now with the rise of Miraidon decks, that I feel like if you're going to play Lugia, you're going to have to play the Single Strike variation just so you don't have that auto loss against Miraidon EX, because we feast, man. We absolutely feast and devour Lugia colorless players. But Single Strike, oh my gosh, it's a little bit of a headache sometimes if they're able to get set up, and especially if you brick yourself as a Miraidon player. Feels bad. The Tyranitar Vs are very good against decks like Mew VMAX and Gardevoir, and of course against any other deck, because Single Strike Energy, slap that bad boy onto Tyranitar, and you're able to one-shot a lot of Pokemon with a single Tyranitar V. On top of that, you also have the big bulky power of Urshifu VMAX, which is just a scary threat in and of itself. So yeah, if you're gonna play Lugia V-Star for Pittsburgh, this is probably the one that you're gonna go with, unless you're my friend Little Dark Fury, who thinks he's going to play with colorless Lugia. We'll see. We'll see. Also, we are going to be vlogging the Pittsburgh Regionals trip, and we'll have LDF in the car for the road trip too. So it'll be fun. We'll talk to him a bunch during the vlog. On to number 6. Number 6 is going to be Arceus Giratina V-Star, the second most popular way to play Giratina, of course, with the first one being Lost Tina or Lost Zone Tina. This deck is very, very straightforward as well, and is in a better, more consistent space, I would say, than compared to Arc Dumb or the Arc Slacking decks out there. Playing Arceus V-Star is always a solid choice because it's such a great attacker and energy accelerant onto the board. Along with the V-Star power, it's just an amazing ability too. Starbirth grabbing exactly what you want to get when you need it, and you can shut down your opponent's decks as well by running your own copy of Path to the Peak. This deck has a ton of supporters along with Bibarel for their draw engine. You got that 2-2 line of Giratina V-Star, which is handy to knock out pretty much any V-Star Pokemon with 280 HP. And then of course, if they happen to have more than 280 HP or a V-Guard energy on it, just slap on that Choice Belt, which you run 2 copies of for this deck, and you are cooking those VMAX Pokemon too, like Mew VMAX, or again, those V-Star Pokemon with V-Guard energy on it. If you want to play Giratina V-Star right now, but haven't, you know, locked in that confidence to play Lost Tina, this is the second best way to play. Number 5 triggered a lot of people, especially on TikTok. When I posted my video on TikTok, there were some very upset people. They were like, hey, if it won North American International Championships, it has to be the best deck. How are you disrespecting my Rapid Strike deck? But then at the same time, they kind of forgot that Mew VMAX won Worlds, and Worlds was also more recent. I triggered one person in particular on TikTok, so that's why it sticks out to me. This deck has a really high skill ceiling, so if you wanted to really challenge yourself mentally and pull off some really fun plays, taking out multiple Pokemon per turn with the damage spreading capabilities of this deck, and you also have that evil Medicham V in there for that Yoga Loop attack. And of course, you got Geokomo in this list as well to help you in those Mew matchups, which I'm sure a lot of those Earthshaper players are going to be scared of. So yeah, great deck, great list. It's definitely a good meta call to play this right now, but if you bump into a bunch of Mews, you are going to feel the pain, and if you don't have much practice in this deck, you need to be practicing this deck because there's a lot of things you have to think about, especially with damage manipulation on the board. Number 4, my favorite deck, of course, it is Miraidon EX. And on screen right now is the highest placed in Miraidon list from the recent World Championships that Andrew Mahone did use. And Sejin Park was in there as well. He won the Korea Nationals with Miraidon, but I don't think he placed like slightly lower than Andrew Mahone. And this list is beautiful, man. It is very consistent, very strong. It all relies on those basic attackers to do all the heavy lifting. And then of course you have a heavy count of Judge and Iono plus Path to the Peak to disrupt your opponents. Now for myself personally, I'm not playing this exact 60, but a lot of people have been using this deck to great success over the last couple of weeks, ever since Worlds went down. I am playing a Magnezone V-Star heavier build, and so if you guys want to see my exact Miraidon list, which I've been seeing some solid success with, check out again the top 10 anti-meta decks or rogue decks in the TCG. I'll have that video pop up at the end of this one in case you want to binge watch that one. And I put a lot more effort into that video, so I would love if you checked it out. This one is, you know, we're low on time. Pittsburgh's coming up. I got to get a lot of work done. I have thousands of dollars of Pokemon cards to list on eBay. eBay link down below. And so the extra time I would use to polish this kind of video up and make it even better, I'm going to be listing cards on eBay. So if you want to buy some Pokemon cards from your boy on eBay, I do have the cheapest prices on eBay 100% of the time. With that said, if you've never played Miraidon before, it is a very easy deck to play. The skill ceiling isn't insanely high for this particular build because it's just a very linear playstyle. So if you want to pick up Miraidon, it's a great choice. It hits weakness for Palkia, hits weakness for Lugia. Judge Path, Iono Path is great against pretty much every deck out there as well. And this deck is not expensive by any means. It's probably one of the cheapest decks you can play. And with the Miraidon EX and Regieleki deck releasing in November, a lot of people are going to start playing Miraidon come November. And there's also going to be Forest Seal Stone in that starter deck too. So the most expensive cards right now in this deck are those like $15, $20 Forest Seal Stones. 3, this deck is actually disgusting. I hate playing against it. My win-loss ratio against it is so bad. And that is going to be Turbo Lost Box. Now, I don't want to discredit. There is another really good Lost Box deck out there, which is way harder to play than this deck, and that is Lost Box Kyogre. So that's one list that didn't make this top 10 deck list, but Lost Zone Kyogre honestly might take Pittsburgh as well. It's in a really great position in the current meta. It's just not as popular. A lot less people are playing it at online tournaments and stuff like that. It's a higher skill ceiling. There's a lot of resource management you have to do. You basically have to play from the back foot the entire game. You have to play with your opponent with the lead pretty much the entire game, and then you just close out with the Kyogre and take 3 or 4 prizes in your last turn with like no cards left in deck. So it's a little stressful, but if you're practiced, play Kyogre. But if you're not, Turbo Lost Zone is so good. It is disgusting. I hate playing against it. If you want to play a Lost Zone, this is probably going to be the deck you play unless you're going to play Giratina V-Star. On to number 2, and I have 5 minutes left before Toronto Regionals open up for registration. At the end of this video, I'll let you guys know if I was able to secure a spot or not. But yeah, number 2 is the Gardevoir deck that Tord Reklev played for 2nd place at the World Championships. Gardevoir is, again, another fantastic deck in the current meta. It has single prizes that can do lots of damage, 2 prizes that can do lots of damage. It's able to not get set up at the start of the game and still do really well throughout the game because you have comeback mechanics like Reversal Energy in there. You have Corellia with Mirage Step as well. The only downside to playing Gardevoir is it is going to be a long game. Gardevoir players are the slowest in history. They take the most amount of time to play. And so if you're not comfortable with the deck, you don't play it. You're going to get called for time. You're going to get judged called for slow playing. Just don't play it. But you also have a huge target on your back too. A lot of decks are making their adjustments for Pittsburgh with Gardevoir being a top deck to counter. Similar to how people are going to try and counter Mew. One of the best things about this deck too is it is not expensive at all. The most expensive thing about this deck is the time you're going to have to invest into practicing it and learning all the lines of plays and learning how to, you know, come back with it too. Because this deck, the comeback potential is some of the best in the Pokemon TCG. On to number 1, the best Pokemon TCG deck in the current game right now, and that is Lost Tina. Giratina V-Star featuring the Lost Zone engine. You have the consistency of the Lost Zone engine. You got Cramorant for early to mid-game pressure, Sableye to do evil demonic things, and then Giratina V-Star to close out the game. The particular build I'm showing you guys on screen right now does have water energies. However, I've seen a lot of top players say that they're not going to be using a water build of this deck. They'll play the Greninja for, you know, draw power, but they're not going to be attacking with Radiant Greninja. So if you can find a list that you're comfortable with that doesn't use the 3 water energies and instead uses maybe a heavier Sableye line or something like that, or 4 Jet, 5 Psychic, 4 Grass to really consistently use Sableye's attack along with getting those Giratina V-Star attacks in, this deck is just so good. It's the best deck in the game. Comment down below what you guys are playing. If you're going to Pittsburgh, let me know what you're playing too. And we're about to find out in a second if I was able to register for the Toronto Pokemon Regionals. 2, 1, refresh, go to registration. Yes, yes, yes. Take my money. Come on. Get me in! $107 to play at the Pokemon Regionals in Toronto. Holy smokes. All I have to do is check out and confirm, and we are good to go. So click on screen to check out the top 10 anti-meta decks, and I'll see you in that video. I don't want to offend any... Actually, I don't really care if I offend you. It is what it is. If you're offended, you're a snowflake. Bruh.